our Director of the Food Systems Program, Dr. Marcia Ostrom. Marcy, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Hello,
Great.
and welcome to our WSU Food Systems Hub program. I am the director of the WSU Food Systems and an associate professor in the School of the Environment and Extension. And I am thrilled to be restarting this program today based on the feedback that we received from you all during our annual meeting and our annual survey at the end of last year. We heard from you that you highly value professional co-learning opportunities and the chance to network with other food systems practitioners from across Washington. So I want to thank our staff, our small but mighty food systems team, faculty, and staff here. We have Abba Kaiser, who's been organizing this particular program, Kate Smith, who's our Sustainable Food and Farming Education Leader, and Christina Ocana Gallegos, who's our Food Systems Agriculture Coordinator and based out of the WSU Skagit County Extension Office. So thanks to all of you, and also thanks to our steering committee who try their best to keep us on track. And our steering committee comes from across the WSU system, from campus out and also out in county extension offices: Diane Smith, Hannah Browse, Holly Henning-Yeager, Jen Moss, Kate Smith, Lynn Carpenter-Boggs, and Lizanne Powers-Hammond. So thanks to all of you, and not your fault if we go off track, but thanks for all your efforts.
Awesome. Thanks, Marcy. I just wanted to talk a little bit about ways to engage with our program and the history of the hub before we get started. So I'm going to post this in the chat as well, but I've been taking over the communications for our program and creating some new systems for you to be able to share your news and information across our team and beyond. So we have a new email system set up. You can email foodsystems.news@wsu.edu to have your programming and announcements be submitted for our bi-monthly newsletter that goes out to over 3,000 recipients across Washington. There is also the WFFR listserv, which is a discussion list for you to share news across the food system anytime. You can sign up on our website, foodsystems.wsu.edu. And finally, if you have an idea for a speaker that you'd like to see featured in one of our upcoming hub calls, we have a form for you to nominate. I'm just going to go over a brief history of the hub, which started in 2020. As Marcia mentioned, we're relaunching this initiative to meet current needs. You can sign up for a single event or the whole series, and all of these will be available on YouTube, along with all of our previous sessions. So this is really a call for you, community-based orgs, Washington state agency staff and specialists, food and farm businesses. We really encourage you to spread the word far and wide about this program so that you can come together and connect. We'll have a chance for everyone to speak a little later on in the program. The hub call is designed as a series for this early spring. And we've got Debra, Hansen, and Clea Rome today, who will introduce in a moment, speaking on ripple effects mapping. Next month, we're going to be featuring the good work of Jen Moss and Kylie Pybus on food systems work in federally funded nutrition programs, followed by Marcia Ostrom, our director, leading a participatory action research with extension session. And our last session is still open if you want to use that nomination form and tell us who you'd like to hear from. These are designed as a professional development series, but also as a networking space. So the first 20 to 30 minutes are going to be a professional sharing information, and then we'll move into a more collaborative discussion and Q&A series. So we'll post this nomination form in the chat once again. And I'm going to toss the mic to Kate Smith and Marcia Ostrom to lead us in a Jamboard activity about engagement with our program. This is the first hub call of the year, and we'd really love to hear your history with the program and how you felt connected to the food systems program over time and what we can learn from that. So I'm going to go ahead and stop share and toss it over to Kate and Marcia to lead us through a brief activity.
So, in the spirit of participatory learning and engagement, we hope to hear from all of you here via the Jamboard. There should be a link in your chat screen. If you came on late, we've been hopefully sending that, putting that in there again and again. If you click on it, you should be able to come to a Jamboard that says 2 questions and 2 boards. The first board says, when have you felt most engaged with the WSU Food Systems program? And we hope you can grab a little sticky note from the left-hand bar and put some ideas in there. And then once you've done that, you can move on to the second board that asks you to tell us about what you've taken away that we can learn and apply from those moments of connection. And this is really important to us as we envision our future work. So we appreciate it. Hopefully you are getting there to that Jamboard by clicking on that link.
Yep, and I see some of you are already on there. I'll add the link in again in case you just joined and didn't see it yet.
And be sure to let us know if you're having problems getting there, either in the chat or we're just still here on the Zoom screen. If you want to ask a question, if you haven't done this before. Hopefully you're finding the little picture of the sticky note along the left-hand side of the bar once you get to the screen.
This is really exciting. I'm seeing a lot of first timers, which is awesome.
You can put as many stickies as you want on each board, but once you do the first board, be sure to move on to the second one by clicking the arrow at the top.
Feel free to add more than one sticky note as well to any section if you have more ideas.
No limits on sticky notes.
Great. I'm so curious how people heard about the hub call. There are so many first timers. If you feel like sharing in the chat after this activity, how you heard about us, I'd be really curious to know.
Or you can add it to the Jamboard. How you first became engaged could also be the question. We really appreciate all this feedback. We're going to collect this and try to organize it. Well, but I think they're slowing down if you want to move on, but we'll leave it open if people have ideas later. Seen a lot of people who like to make connections with others doing food systems work, and also appreciation for in-person meetings. And also interest in local and regional connections.
Fantastic. Yeah, folks, feel free to keep adding more info in the Jamboard. It's super useful for us and for our program. And I wanted to give an official intro of myself. My name is Abba Kaiser. I'm the program manager for the WSU Food Systems program. I'm tuning into you live from traditional Makah and S'Klallam lands here on the Olympic Peninsula. But I'm originally from Piscataway Kanoi territory over in the Delmarva area in near DC. And I use she and they pronouns. I've been with WSU for 7 years, and I'm really, really excited about bringing people together to solve collective problems and hear collective voices. And I'm with that very inspired about the ripple mapping effects that Debra Hansen helped to co-found, and we're going to hear from Debra in just a minute. But we also are joined by Clea Rome, who is going to be adding some of their experience with actually using some of this technology in a local group here on the peninsula. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speakers. We first have Debra Hansen kicking it off. Debra is a professor and WSU Stevens County Extension Director, focusing on community and economic development in rural Stevens County. She is one of the original architects of ripple effects mapping, which was developed in 2008 to discover poverty reduction outcomes in individual communities who participated in Washington's Horizon Community Leadership Programs. She continues to map programs and train others to use this engaging tool. She has a master's degree in adult education from Penn State, and I'm really thrilled to be welcoming Debra. We are also going to do a little intro for Clea Rome, who is an associate professor of community and economic development and a director of the WSU Clallam County Extension Office here on the peninsula. She oversees extension programs in agriculture, community food security, and waste reduction. Prior to joining WSU Clallam County Extension, she worked with the U.S. Department of Ag on resource-based community and economic development projects. She has a master's degree in landscape architecture from the University of Michigan School of Natural Resources and Environment. So with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Debra and Clea to talk about ripple effects mapping and its effectiveness in communities that they've seen so far. So I'm going to go ahead and stop share. I'm going to post some links in the chat and take it away, Debra.
Great. Thanks very much, Abba and team. I'm very happy and excited to be speaking in front of you about ripple effects mapping. It's a participatory evaluation tool that I think especially works in communities and around systems like food systems that are so complex and hard to put a bow on and tell the story of, because there's so many components of it. I, like Abba said in the intro, I created this in 2008. Because I didn't know how to evaluate a program that we did around poverty reduction. That was a very complex, very engaged, many people, many tasks type of program. And I was hearing stories from people well after the program of ways that it impacted their lives that I didn't know how to collect. So I started this mapping thing and it grew into a bigger thing. And then other colleagues have helped adapt and put some theory behind it, which we'll talk about today. I'm going to give you the 60,000 foot overview of it. We're not going to go into a lot of details about how to do it. I'm mostly here as a teaser for you to think about why to do it. As you look at them, I'm not going to take questions during, because it's a pretty unique process and I'd like to get through the whole thing. And then afterwards, I'm very happy to take questions. If we don't have time to answer them today, I will for sure follow up with you. I will also follow up with some materials that you can link to other sites and other places to get more information if you want. I'm working internally to figure out how to do some training on this. We've got some plans in place, but nothing to announce today, but You'll hear about it through the Food Hub and ABBA when it, in fact, it does come to place. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right now and walk you through what ripple effects mapping is. So it really is a way to capture impacts of complex work. And tell me if you see the slide advance.
So far, just the first one.
Just the first one, yeah. Oh, how about that?
Looks good.
Okay, so I am not an evaluation specialist, and I always make sure to announce that. I run programs in my county. I care about evaluation somewhat. No, I do care. But what I love about this program and this way of doing business is that the people who do ripple effects mapping feel this way about evaluation. When they do a ripple effects mapping event in person, they're excited about the program that they are doing and the stories that they're able to tell. We did this event in Wenatchee at the end of last year, and this was about a very intense, complex system on Narcan vending machines. And the people there were just buoyant about being able to share their stories with people in the room about the work that they've done. And the reason we do it is because the impact that you are doing in your programming may not be evident for a long time. If you think about these kids that are learning how to garden, you may not know that they got inspired by that gardening class and then took more gardening classes and then joined the community garden and then went into horticulture in college. You may never know that thread of story if you don't ask questions about the ripple effects. Like I said in my intro, it's very participatory. The audience members that you are evaluating get engaged in the data. They tell stories, we map it on the wall, they go up and mark it and talk about it. It becomes their story and their evaluation. It's really good at bringing out the intended and unintended outcomes of your program. When I think of evaluation, traditional, you can create a survey, you can create stakeholder interviews, you can create all kinds of ways to gather data for what you intended to happen. But it's those unintended outcomes that are sometimes really valuable to know because it's not something that you thought to do. When we did this originally with the poverty reduction workshop, we taught leadership skills, and several people throughout the state took that leadership skills and ran for office and ran for school boards and ran for, elected positions that we never would have thought of. But when we did this ripple mapping event, they said, yeah, those things I learned there, I took here. So those are the types of stories that we're trying to elicit out of this work. Like I said, the participants really, really like this. They see emerging patterns and trends when the stories start to unfold. It's fun and engaging for them. It's a positive focus. I love that ABBA and the team started this meeting with a positive question. It's called appreciative inquiry, and it puts you in the frame of mind of thinking about what's working. What are we hopeful about? Why are we doing this work? It connects people to a larger purpose. When you're working on your little world and your little garden and your little life, sometimes you don't see the bigger picture of everybody working on it. So when you get people in a room, they can talk about their stories and you start to see that you're part of a larger purpose. It also, because it's up on paper and they're telling stories, it allows participants to reflect upon the growth of their program, of themselves, what kinds of things are happening. We stop at the end of the event and ask people, what do you see on the map that you didn't expect? What kinds of activities are happening that you weren't aware of? But because we work for a university and we care about data and things, it also benefits evaluators. So it's a way to collect stories and impacts that's very unique. Like I said, we can do things like surveys and stakeholder interviews and things like that are very, very good at collecting data. This is another way of doing it. I often tell people this is not the only way to collect data in your program. This is one of the ways, because it will not collect some things that you need to do through traditional methods. But it does give group validation of results. When I started training this, I was in Cornell once talking about it, and one evaluator said, how do you know people are not just telling you happy stories and not the unhappy ones? And I said, I can sit at my computer on an online survey and just tell what I want to tell. This allows you to tell stories and have people say that's true or not true, or I have a different aspect of that. I've found it to be very engaging with people to come together and understand where their differences are, and then also validate what their individual stories are. You can do this in the middle of a program, at the end of a program, many, many times. We've done it at the end of a grant for a grant report, or we've done it periodically for a program that continues to go on and on through the years. It's a way to capture the chain of events from a very complex, evolving work. So if someone starts to tell you a story, and I'll show you how to do this in a few minutes, there's ways to prompt them to tell the continuing story, or how it started, or where they are going with it. It's an engaging, participatory way to do that. And then, like I said earlier, when it's difficult to conceptualize and measure with other methods, this is a way to do it. So this has worked in many different kinds of programs. We started it with the poverty reduction community leadership, but it's been used in 4-H, food systems. Clea is going to talk a little bit about how we did it on the peninsula. We've done it with master gardeners, business, farm, tribal. I've done it with all ages, all cultures, all types of groups. Everybody loves to tell their story and see it unfold on a piece of paper. So it's a very positive way to engage people in the work. Here's an image of a guide that I'll send you a link to. It's you can download it for free from the University of Minnesota. These are some colleagues that worked with this on this with me. It's full of case studies around some of this work, and then how to do the ripple effects mapping. You can buy it for $10, I think, and none of it comes back to us, but that's the cost of printing. So why does it work? There are 4 components to ripple effects mapping that we all agree need to be there to make this effective. One of them is to start with that appreciative inquiry and positive questions. We want to make sure that we're talking about stories that work. We all know how to talk about and find information about what's not working. This particular evaluation tool builds on the work that is working. It's very participatory, like I explained. That group intervention or interviewing and reflection is important. And then this radiant thinking and mapping is what I'll show you some of the things that have happened out of that. So it blends this theory and practice around evaluation that, to be honest, when you're doing this, I never tell people it's an evaluation. I tell them it's a celebration of their work, and out comes their stories that they want to share. So the appreciative inquiry part is like the question that Abba and the group asked you at the beginning, Marcia. People move in the directions of the stories that they tell about themselves. And I would encourage you, when you're doing group meetings, staff meetings, or anything that you want to get people together, if you start with a positive question about what went right the last week or the last month, you often end at a better place in the meeting than starting off with talking about what's wrong. I've done it over and over with groups, and it's really amazing that people want to talk about what is working and how do we do more of that. We use this as a small group and individual conversation to start the ripple mapping. You start thinking about what you want to do. Everybody's involved. This is a spontaneous picture of people that did a ripple map in Idaho that said, oh, can we get a picture with this? Because this is the work that we did. We did all this work. It's such a visual way of seeing what kind of things are happening in your community or in your program. There's an interview and reflection piece where you start out with those appreciative inquiries one-on-one, so you can think about what stories you want to tell. You tell one person about it, and then when you get to the group event where we start mapping, you're using your own words and you're able to think about the stories that you want to tell. And then there's this radiant thinking. Mind mapping came about in the 70s, a book called Mind Mapping by Terry Buzan, who I read years ago. It's often used for note-taking, brainstorming, problem solving, and planning. We think we're one of the first to use it for evaluation. We're using this cause and effect, chain of events type of mapping on a wall to show what kinds of things come out of a program. And then the magic that happens in ripple effects mapping is people start to tell a story and we prompt them to find more information. So At a meeting, somebody said, I'm really proud of the fact that we had increased community leadership. So you put that on the wall. And then you say, well, who became leaders? Well, youth became leaders. What happened as a result of youth becoming leaders? Well, they created a youth council. Well, why was that important to you? They wrote news articles. They did community cleanup. But why does all of that matter to your community? What's different? Youth become more involved in the community and feel a part of it. So that's what happens out of ripple mapping with a facilitator. You might think to say, I love the fact that youth are becoming leaders, but we start unpacking that and finding out why it's important that youth are leaders. You take that map and you digitize it into this map that I know you can't read. It's a software called XMind, but it starts to take that written data into qualitative data that you can analyze and organize. You can create a really beautiful map with photos and logos to print out and put on your wall or share with your funders or share with your group. It becomes interactive in the map itself because you look at it and you think about those logos and those photos and those quotes that come out of that map. You can take the images of the map and put them into a report. As you're talking about the work that you've been doing, you can include this one single map ripple that came out of it so that to demonstrate to a funder or to a grant report why it was important. You can use it in presentations. We did a ripple map with the Hunger Coalition here in our area, and they had created cool pups. You might have heard the stories before, some of you. But in this PowerPoint presentation at a gala, I started talking about the story and just popping up these ripples behind me that people could read about what has happened since inventing this cool pup. And they start to see it as, instead of just a trailer, it has happened to affect all of these things in our community. And as I was telling the story, I said, we want 2 more cool pups. And they all donated within 10 minutes to build 2 more cool pups. So it allows people to understand why the story is important to you and how this was important to the coalition. You can also use the data in different kinds of infographics. This pulls out things that are happening in your story, and that's a very visual way to show it to your community or your elected officials, or even to your the people in your group that are doing the work. The power of ripple effects mapping is that it is flexible. I've showed you some of the core components. There are many ways to adjust those for your group and with what you want. I've done ripple effects mapping for people who just want team building. I've done it for people who have written a 54-page analysis for a 7-year program. No matter what you want to ripple effects mapping, there could be a place for it in your program and in your community. It does document those unintended outcomes that are so hard to find. You can use it across multiple settings, all kinds of participants. Kids love to tell stories, so do adults. And then you can use it with any program, project, community, coalition, and systems work. It's really adaptable, and it's fun to do. I often say that if I could quit my job and just do ripple effects mapping, I would, because I love to do it. Every time I get in front of a group and do it, I seriously, I'm not over exaggerating. Something makes me cry or makes the hair on the back of my neck tingle because someone tells even the tiniest story of impact that they felt about a program that they're proud of, and you just have this buoyant feeling about that they get to tell that story and other people get to hear it. So that's ripple effects mapping in a really fast description. But we invited Clea Rome to participate here too, because we did ripple effects mapping with her coalition on the peninsula. I'll let her describe who was in the room and maybe how it felt that day and what they did with it at that point.
Sure, thanks. Thanks, Debra. Yes, I'm here to be a witness and testify that ripple mapping is indeed as awesome as Debra described it. So we invited Debra and our colleague Rebecca Serro out to the peninsula. I think it was like back in 2018 is my recollection, to do a session with a a group called the Peninsula Food Coalition, which is a group of maybe 20 or so members of food banks and food pantries across the peninsula, as well as the kind of state agencies and nonprofits that support the work in the area of hunger relief. And we'd been meeting at that point for several years and had a lot of outcomes, again, kind of intangible and complex, as Debra said, you know, not sort of really concrete things that we could point to out of our coalition, but we all knew that something was there that we wanted to capture. So we invited Debra and Rebecca to come out and do a session with us, and it took I would say the morning, if my recollection is right. It typically takes a morning, and we provided food and we got together, and there's actually a video. I think Abba put the link in it, and so you can actually, yeah, oh good, Abba, thanks. You can see us in action as we're doing it, and you can feel the energy in the room of people just having a great time. You know, it's so interesting. We continue to meet monthly, our Peninsula Food Coalition, and I would say, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say, like, at least once during our, still to this day, during our monthly meetings, that someone will refer to that session and say, well, yeah, but do you remember in our ripple mapping session when so-and-so said this? And do you remember how, you know, so to this day, it's a real foundational point for our coalition in guiding us going forward. I feel like it helped us solidify our history as a group. It was sort of a group storytelling event. And as Debra said, there's so many different ways that we could use it. For our group, I would say the event itself, participating in the event and having this facilitated conversation from Debra and Rebecca was the sort of main takeaway. But out of that, as Debra showed, there are graphic products that you can use in terms of PR. There's concrete evaluation. It's just a really versatile tool, and the experience itself unquestionably brought our group closer together. So that's my take on it.
Good, thanks, Clea. I also wanted to talk a little bit about something we tried for the very first time with Clea's group. Is we had, we called it the fishbowl of participants in the front of the room. And then behind them were stakeholders and funders, some pretty big heavy hitters sitting behind them that give money to the food banks and to the coalition. And they were able to hear the stories firsthand and see the stories unfold up front. And what I thought was magical, and I've used it again and again, the Narcan one that I did, we had people in the background that were judges and community leaders listening to these stories. And we had, you know, addicts and prior addicts and coaches. And there's some magic that happens with the group that's in front about telling their stories and looking at the wall that they completely forget who's behind them. And so there's this candid conversation about what they're happy and proud of and want to share. And then the people in the back get to hear how sincere and amazing it is. It's pretty fascinating. It takes a little bit of trust to do that, because you know, if they're giving you money, you also want to be careful about what you're saying, but there's a magic to it that happened. I don't know if you had any feelings about that, Clea.
Yeah, absolutely. I had forgotten that's how we set it up, to have that whole group behind us. It wasn't just it wasn't just funders. It was also people who were interested in forming similar coalitions, and got to kind of hear and see what the journey had been for us in forming that coalition, the work that resulted in it. I also wanted to add a point about the appreciative inquiry and the interview and reflection. That was such a powerful and important component of the experience. because I remember distinctly there was a couple of staff members from some of the outlying food banks that joined us who are definitely not regularly in the practice of speaking in front of a group. And so had we not had that chance to do the appreciative inquiry and interview them and hear their reflections, one-on-one, where they opened up to the person they were working with, that may not have been captured. They probably would not have been the type of people to speak up in front of, the 30 or so people in the room, but their stories were captured. And when they saw them captured, they were they started to participate in a really engaged way, which was also really cool about it.
Yeah. So I did see a request for the book link, and my computer was acting funny when I looked for it while Clea was talking. So after we break away and you guys start networking, I'll find it and put it in the chat so you have it. And then, like I said, I'll be sending out a one-page information with a couple relevant articles that have been written about food systems that have done ripple effects mapping, or more ways that you can find out about it. And then I will absolutely let you know when we put together some training if you are interested. When we do the training, we do a lot of practice and learning and trying and all that kind of stuff, because it's a pretty unique process. And if you don't practice it and try it, it's hard to think about doing it. So now I'd be happy to take some questions if you have any immediate before you guys. I think we got 6 minutes before we go to your next part of the agenda.
Great. Thank you so much to both of you. Does anyone have questions for either Clea or Debra?
I have one. This is Carol McFarland. I run the WSU Farmers Network, and this, like, as an implementer of participatory engagement things, hopefully this is a quick question, but the giant white paper that you use to put, it looks like you have this like giant roll of white paper on the wall, just like from a logistical perspective, like where do you get that? Because like I actually would love to implement this sort of thing, but that kind of thing is one of the barriers. So I'd love to hear more about the tools.
I'm very opinionated about my my tools. I'm an old graphic designer. That was my job before I started at Extension. I can absolutely, I'll include the link to the paper that we use. I'll have an Amazon link there, but you can get fairly small rolls of it. I have the teacher version of the big roll on the floor because I do so much ripple mapping. And then I'm particular about the pen so that you don't run through the paper and write up the walls and all that. So I'll send that with the link that I do. There is also an online version. When COVID happened, we were right in the middle of a huge federally recognized tribal extension ripple mapping project, and we pivoted to put it online. And it's, for me, not as fun because I love that like in-room engagement, but it's really great for somebody that has a large geography or can't travel, or in times of COVID, we couldn't get together. And the stories and the outcomes still bubble out because people still love this, and there's a way to show it on screen. So there's two different methods that we can use. Like I said, of course, I love the one in the room where I can jump around and get excited. So Carol, I'll include that with you, for you.
Wonderful. Any other questions? Feel free to raise your hand or post it in the chat or just unmute yourselves. Any other questions for Clea or Debra?
Okay, well, one of the things I'll send is a link to the extension publication. It's called the Advanced Facilitator Guide. And when we put it together, we actually put in scripts and everything. So you could read it and say, read it out loud and do it, or you can put your own words in. What we want to do, Clea mentioned it, Rebecca Ciro, she used to work for WSU. I mean, this is open source, open access. We want everybody to use this tool if it's useful. And so we try to create tools that you can pick up and use. I'll send you all of that, and then my email address will be there. You can email me, and then you can watch for training if you really want to dive deep and understand, how it all pulls together. I didn't even touch the how do you code all that data and analyze it, and that's a whole different ballgame that we would have to touch at another time. Now that's all I got. That's all the commercial space I have.
Great. So I'm going to go ahead and send us into breakout rooms unless, Marcia, did you want to add anything before we do that?
I always have questions, but I don't want to distract us from going into our breakout rooms. So
No, please, we have a few minutes if you have a
okay,
question.
so I'm always interested in the real practical nuts and bolts, Debra. So, say someone has an idea that they want to use ripple mapping effects to help evaluate or map. What would you suggest as a first step for getting started? Like, would one of those books be the best place to start? Or how do you formulate your questions and how do you organize your group that's going to participate? Just real practical, like how would you get started with this?
Where would you go? Yeah. So the book is talks a lot about the theory and how it came to be, and then has case studies. That one is maybe not the best place to start. It's good to look through. The facilitator guide really walks you through those steps, Marcy, to talk about why appreciative inquiry and how to set those questions. We actually have a document of just scads of appreciative inquiry questions that you could consider. And then in the guide, it talks about how many people to invite and how to set it up. That's what we talk about in the training as well. And I'm not trying to push it off to that, but we really dig down into why does it work for this many people and why couldn't you add, do more? And the event itself is one of those, if you can get the concept of it and then just step off the cliff and try it, you can kind of refine your skill set and what you're good at. I can only facilitate and map on the wall at the same time. I can't separate those two in my head. Other people do. Somebody will facilitate, somebody will write. We audio record it, we get transcripts, we transcribe it. It depends on how deep you want to go and how wide. But those are the types of things that we really unpack in the training, and it's pretty well outlined in the facilitator guide. I haven't, I've been doing this for so long, I'm not sure what steps would be missing out of that guide. Somebody else would have to say, okay, I don't get it, if there's something that's missing, but I'd be happy to discuss it with anyone. The training, someone asked us, there's a link to the training. We're still formulating the timing and when and how, and so you'll get information about that through this network. Once we get it set up, you'll get an invitation to participate if you want.
Great. And I'll also link again the ways to send information through our listserv and ways to sign up on our mailing list as well. So you'll be hearing from us and from Debra when that opportunity becomes available. And I'm going to transition us now to the breakout rooms. And I've put Debra, Clea, Marcy, and some of our steering committee members here in different rooms to be sort of anchor points. But the question to reflect on is just going back to our Jamboard question of just how did you hear about the food systems program? When have you felt the most engaged, and what can we learn from those opportunities? So just a really brief intro of who you are, where you're calling in from, and the ways that you connect to the food systems program. We'll have about 10 minutes. So think about a minute for your intro, and I'll see you back here at around 1:55 for some wrap up. All right, here we go. From the recording, and I just want to say also that the resources from the chat, the links will be also shared, not the conversations, but the actual resources. So anybody want to pop in here? Let us know what's going on in your world. What's coming up? Yes, Marissa.
I can go. So the Eat Local First Collaborative, of which Clea and Marcia are a part of our steering committee, we are getting ready to launch our annual CSA promotion campaign. And so if any of you are interested in supporting local CSA farms in your region and want some messaging and materials, we have a toolkit for the CSA campaign that we can share with you. And yeah, just help us support farms that are looking to fill subscriptions for this upcoming season.
Awesome. Thanks, Marissa. And you're going to post a link in the chat as well. Awesome. Anyone else want to share? Also, we'll officially say farewell at 2, but I'll stick around for at least 15 minutes if anybody wants to stay on the call just to connect and chat. So
I have
else?
something to share. However,
Go ahead, Michelle.
I don't have, I would have to email you the information for you to share with the group, but we are getting ready to launch our Eating Right for Your Health Type CSA program that's integrated with food and nutrition. So we do a nutritional assessment, and then based on the individual health and family health history, we do a meal and menu plan, and then use that to create the ingredients for a shopping list. And then we use that list to put the ingredients in your box and support you that way for your health type. And so that program that we're launching is so that we could raise dollars to help the BIPOC community that we support to manage chronic diseases. And so if anyone would be interested in participating in that program, I can send you that information and that you could share with the group.
Awesome, Michelle, thanks. And I feel free to email me. It's abba.kaiser@wsu.edu, and I can connect you and get you signed up too for the listserv. So you can just post directly to, I think we have over 1,000 people on that listserv at this point. So it would be great to share that information. We have some people asking how to connect with that resource. So we'll definitely be looking for your contact info there.
Thank you.
Am I unmuted?
You are.
Okay. I have something I'm asking. So I'm in the middle of working on a project to try to create a digital farmers market. So one where you could look on a map and then you can go and buy directly through it, but everything's going to be all in one. So people don't have to make their own websites or do all these other things to try to promote their stuff. But right now I'm in the middle of trying to develop tools to help people on the back end management of it. And so if anyone has any ideas of things that would be useful for them on the production side, I'd love any input. And so I'm going to put my email in the chat if you have any ideas.
Awesome.
Is that a specific region, Spencer?
Right now I'm going to launch in Washington, but as it grows, I'm trying to expand.
Is there, have you looked at the existing platforms and you could just add a map to the front end of that?
So there's existing platform, but I feel like the platforms are okay, but I don't think, at least for me, I feel like they feel hard for repeat buying. And so I'm trying to redo it with a bit of a smarter UI where it's easier for users to use, and then also make it almost feel as easy as like Facebook for people to go on and like interact with everything.
Cool.
Thanks, Spencer. We've got your info in the chat here. That looks great. And we'll let folks who have a 2 o'clock go, but we're still hanging out and recording. So if you want to hang out and chat with us and share more about the work that you do, we're available. Warren, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Cool. Sounds good. Yeah, in the interest of sharing, I'd be interested in getting feedback from folks on a new tool that an organization I'm working with, Oregon Seafair. So it is Oregon based, but are using a GIS story mapping tool that in some ways you kind of consider it more of like a living gaps analysis of the short supply chain food system for the more of the seafood focused. But you can click on various kind of data points to help better understand where the seafood harvesting beds are, where the cold storage are, where the co-packing facilities are, commissary kitchens. So it's using GIS story maps as a way to kind of tell the story of the food system. So I think it's a good start. Looking forward to get folks' feedback on the kind of a 2.0 version. But at this point, I think it'll be a good tool for us to use just during work sessions with economic development agencies and the likes to give a better story of the Oregon coast short supply chain food system.
Awesome. Warren, do you have a timeline on that?
It actually the version 1 was just completed within the last month or two, so we haven't really got a scheduled for the revamp of it. So, but yeah, and I dropped it in the chat there.
Great, great. Good to see you and good to hear about this.
Yeah.
This
Cool.
tool. I feel like the seafood folks, we need to give them some love in the food system conversation.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
So I have a question. And hi, Marcia. I really enjoyed, like, I still have really amazing memories of the class, the food systems class, like quite a few years ago now, up in the Quillisasket farm. But anyway, so I have a meeting with some growers coming up on Friday, or that I'll be attending with some growers, and they're, the group of like really innovative small grains growers in the dryland system, kind of fallow region, pretty obligate fallow region. And I know you guys have the Cascadia grains kind of component of the work that you guys do, and I don't know where that's at, but I think one of the questions as these growers pursue some of their soil health goals and that sort of thing is, really they want to diversify. I'm sure this is not news to you, but I mean, these larger scale growers, like with, several thousand acres, are really interested in opportunities to diversify, but they can't without a market. And I guess I'm sure that you guys have thought about that question. And I would be interested to hear some of your input on that.
So Carol, I would invite you to help us work on that. We're in a process of envisioning for the next year or so and how we're going to focus our resources. We have, as you can see, not very many people, not very much money, and so much work to do. And still trying to figure out what's most important work for us to focus on, what we can just partner with other people on, how we can just connect people if that's what it takes. And Cascadia Grains has been such an important area of work. But we right now are without a budget. So we're just, and because it's been self-funded, and the model was the big conference, and that took a hit during COVID. So we're just trying to figure out how to institutionalize this work in a way that, can be more sustainable long-term and actually connect people over time. So I would really invite you to get involved with us and help us as we think through this, who else we can partner with, an extension and out of extension, to ensure that this kind of good work continues, but isn't just dependent on a one big conference, to bring in all the money to make it possible. So we'd love it if you want to get more involved with us in helping figure out those exact questions.
I would love so much to get involved in that conversation with you guys. That's definitely, with my background in food systems thinking, as I'm also kind of working more directly on the ground with, research questions based, around like kind of these guys who are interested in regenerative ag and expanding those type of practices on the ground. Like diversification is a huge part of it. And it sounds like based on what I've heard from like, some of their last meetings, they've talked with like highline grain growers as like a consolidation point, but I don't know, like, do you have any sense as to what types of crops could be marketed and what kind of alternative markets there might be? Or like, maybe we should just, I'd love to schedule a follow-up conversation with your team about that if this is not the place for it.
Yeah, a lot of great work has been done and a lot of great work needs to be done. So it's one of those where we should probably be doing ripple mapping to figure out, what the most important parts of this work are and how we, what's our niche to sort of help keep this work going. But yeah, I think it's a much bigger conversation than we can have right here, right now, but you are signed up to help us have that conversation.
Yeah, let's do it. Like I said, I'm really excited to hear what happens on Friday with this group and kind of what they're interested in growing and, you know, the role of that Highline grain growers is able to play in that, but you know, just to try to consolidate and market like a bigger package of whatever. So anyway.
I think there's also, oh, sorry, Marcy, go ahead.
But I just want to make sure we know how to find you, Carol. I think we do, right?
It's pretty easy. Carol.Garland@wsu.edu.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
And Carol, are you signed up for our Cascadia Grains newsletter? We've been sending out different information about some of our partner organizations at the University of Idaho and Rural Roots, who are organizing a lot in the inland Northwest around the grains as well.
Yeah, I've worked closely with Colette DePhelps.
Okay, great.
Or at least, you know, like I know Colette, you know, for quite a few years at this point. So,
Great.
You know, I've had conversations with her and just, I don't know, I just trying to find different opportunities to
Sure.
connect the dots a little bit more. Like I think a lot of us are. So glad you guys
Yes.
were on this event today. And thank you so much. What a cool resource. So
Thank you.
big papers and just the right markers.
Very important which markers you use. All about the user experience. Cool. I just put the sign up for our particular mailing lists in the chat as well. So I'll be sending those up in a follow-up too, but love the questions, Carol. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I've been really excited about kind of the participatory engagement, which is how it kind of evolved into, you know, like for outreach in soil health, and it's kind of now evolved a bit into the co-production of research. For now, I don't know, it's still a little bit nebulous. Who else is, I mean, y'all are still on the call. I don't want to hijack.
I'm mostly just here to listen. This is my first hub call since I started in this work at Harps Against Hunger right before COVID.
Nice. Welcome, Maddie. I recognize your name. I don't know if we've been on calls before.
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, it was fun to, I guess, when I got the email about this call coming up, I dug into the hub website because it seems like that's been up to date over time, and I discovered that there was like a hub presentation on Farm to Food Pantry like a few years ago, which I now coordinate. So yeah.
Yeah, what do you think? Do we need an updated version?
Maybe because we have expanded, I mean, not just like the scale of like counties involved, but also incorporating food groups outside of fresh produce, so like including grains and local dairy and meat. So yeah, that's program's been evolving.
Awesome. Yeah, what counties are you currently working with?
Let's say we're at 32 now, so I have a map behind me to try to interpret it. Yeah, I guess our gaps are more of them are east of the Cascades, I think. Yeah, I guess it's kind of a matter of connecting with an organization to be like the regional agency, like implementing farm to food pantry activities for the county, which currently Clallam and Jefferson Extension are doing that for those counties. Lewis County Extension is doing it like in partnership with the Lewis County Food Bank Coalition. So yeah, a whole, I guess that also lends itself to like the systems approach of the program, like because other agencies are like there's Kitsap Conservation District, but there's also a few county like community action councils and like county food banks. So it's could be kind of like any organization that's on or has like a local network on the farm side or the food assistance side or somewhere in between.
Cool. I'd love to see I'm such a map person. I'd love to see like a visual of how that's spread out. And yeah, let's definitely keep talking if you're serious about wanting to do another hub call.
Potentially. Yeah.
Great.
Round two.
Awesome.
I've got a question, sort of.
Yes, Phil.
So if our work in Rotary is long-term, looking at 50 or 100 years down the road, and we've been reading in our groups and things about soil destruction through agrochemicals in the last hundreds of years. And recently we're actually noticing that you can measure the nutrients inside of produce in new ways and find out that there's 3 levels. There's the grocery store, there's the organic, and then there's the real food that's grown on living soils. And they're like 3 to 1, 5 to 1 difference in nutrient values. Are the research groups and the hubs and everything, are they coordinating with anybody who actually knows how to do that measuring?
Do you mean within WSU specifically?
Within anybody touched by the hub, I was just thinking.
Yeah, we definitely have WSU colleagues who are doing that work and who have made presentations on their studies over the years. If that's something that people are interested in, we could certainly invite some of those people. Like, I don't think any of us are directly doing that research, but we have, we know of good research going on among our colleagues in the College of Agriculture.
There's sort of a financial component to this. I mean, we donate to different things. We're actually trying to think of ways to fund people who would actually prove that it's possible to make money growing food that is actually nutrient dense. And we can't really find people who are feeding the information to the growers in a way that is practical enough for them to make money doing it.
Yeah, I think the research that I know of is more about just trying to measure the nutrient density and those products grown in using different practices. If that's something you're interested in, I say you suggest it as a future topic, because that's what we want to do, is link people with the expertise at Center College of Agriculture. So if there's a chance for us to make that happen, I'm happy to work on that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've got a friend who's, Plus Heritage Grains is rebuilding his soils, Don Sharma. He's really knowledgeable on these things, but he's my age and we're impatient and we really don't want to deal with people who have to be handheld all along the road. And he's got touch connections directly into the WSU research teams through friends. But it's like pushing water uphill to actually get it so that it's financially sustainable on a large scale in ways that is restoring the soils across the country. It's almost as if nobody wants to even talk about it.
So can I just chime in and say, I had the opportunity this last fall to go to the Spokane Food and Farming Conference. Right. And yeah, there's loads of growers that are starting,
yes. Yeah.
That are really interested in this topic and how to market, even the the large grain growers are, really starting to get into that, like what's in your food, like how to make nutritious food.
Yeah, and they're really on the very beginning of it. They're not actually tracking the phytonutrients that are inside them and the other things and how they relate to health and stuff. Like I just got over an infection and realized I needed to get a whole bunch more omega-6s in order to make it so that I could get over the inflammation at the end, which I had, the virus is gone, but I needed to do that. Nobody was telling me that. No doctors are telling me that. Nobody was telling me that there are foods which grown one way have 1/10 the amount of omega-3 than the others in their fats. It's just a data vacuum that's out there as far as the actual food that you eat in areas that are not traditionally measured.
Well, like micronutrients are something I think about a lot too. I mean, if they're not replaced in the soil, they're not in the food. So
that's right. Yeah, exactly. And we have dead soil everywhere. So basically it's several, some of those growers at the conference last year were talking about 4 and 5 years, significantly healthier soils, still not totally restored, but it's not like it's 20 years before you can rebuild your soils. But they're talking about pretty small scale things. And in order to ramp up so that most of the food in our grocery stores is nutrient dense, it's not being talked about on the corporate side very much.
I see Maddie has her hand up. I just want to make sure I'm leaving room for her.
It's part tied in with that because we're also very interested in that topic, to have actual like data on, comparing, like, say in like a farm to food pantry type program, like produce harvested like that morning for the local food pantry versus some like grocery rescue that a food pantry got that's like a day away from just being too gross to eat. I did talk with someone from the Bionutrient Institute a little while ago. It sounds like they do like testing for, like, you can send them crop samples to compare, and you could also like have the option to dig even deeper. Like they've had some like sort of like questionnaire or something to like ask farmers questions about their growing practices if you want to like add that layer of like how their growing practices affect the nutrient contents of like their crops, which is something I think would be super cool to tie into the program, as well as someone who actually has an environmental ecology background. But I think the issue at the time was like funding to do all that tests, because like more tests equal better data, but also requires more funding. Yeah, we've done a little bit of like work attempting to do analysis with like the naturally nutrient rich scores from Adam Brunowski, and just try and looking at the WSDA veggie like subgroups to try to proxy like the diversity of produce coming in through farm to food pantry. Still kind of early. We haven't been able to do a lot on that because we've all been like super busy with other things. But yeah, we're curious. We're love to hear more about like other folks' developments if they like make progress in that realm.
Well, thanks, Maddie and Phil, for those questions. It sounds to me like there's interest in this topic if we wanted to focus on it for one of our food system hubs.
Yeah, and Carol just shared a little bit about the Washington Soil Health Initiative in the chat. And I just wanted to put into, although this is not measuring nutrients, but talking about soil health, we're working on a soil health participatory farmer-led on-farm trial research project here in the Skagit County, and working with farmers implementing trials, and working with the researchers, the soil scientists at the WSU NW Rec. So with Deirdre, and some of you all know Deirdre and Gabe, but Phil, if you're not familiar with them, they're both working on a lot of projects that are taking more comprehensive measurements of soil health and really looking at like the biological activity in the soil, and not just looking at like they're part of this project. It's really cool for showing farmers things that they can do to like on farm take assessments of changes in soil health, but then what are other measurements that are out there to really over a 5-year period measure changes in soil health as a result of certain practices, agricultural practices. So it's not to the measurement of the nutrients in the final produce grown, but they're doing a lot of really interesting things, trying to kind of like expand what we refer to farmers when we're talking about like a soil sample and analysis for soil health.
Yeah, I just need to find local people who have a practical idea, because I'm a retired Air Force intel, I've been all over the world. And so my real project, which scares people off, is to go to the Columbia Basin hillsides using rainwater harvesting to regenerate soils on that land in a way to prove that it can be done in Greece and in Oman, then find partners in those countries in order to actually create a worldwide swing towards taking garbage lands that are rocky and have no soil and actually regenerating them within a 5 or 10 year period and creating sustainable economies. So that's a little scary. So I need more practical people.
Let's go to Greece. That's what I heard from that.
And the Dalmatian coast.
Fine, if we have to.
in a sailboat.
I mean, I really thought that like, rocky marginal ground is supposed to make the best steak, right? Isn't that what we do with marginal lands? But
So I'm right on the Spokane River. My soil is all rocks and all nothing. It's totally dead, nothing. It's not been killed by anything. And I'm sitting here wanting somebody to do something to fix my land for me. I'm 70. I really don't want to get out there with a wheelbarrow. So I really want to have a big project that sounds so cool that somebody will fix my acre right.
awesome. This has been such an inspiring conversation. Thank you so much for hosting this, you guys. It's been
It is
really
good.
nice to visit with you all.
Thanks for engaging, Carol. Thanks for all you're bringing to the table.
Thanks, everyone.
Great seeing and meeting you all.
Thanks
Thank you.
for all your ideas and questions. Nice to see you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.